Hi there and welcome to Gravel Union Talks, a podcast series full of inspiring stories, news and events from the world of gravel. Each month we will be talking with guests who are passionate about riding off the beaten track, adventure riding, bikepacking and gravel racing. I'm your host Carlo, and behind the microphone in the UK it's Olly. Olly, how you doing?
Very good, thank you. A little jet lagged.
A little jet lag.
I'm good.
Well, you had like a big travel, right? The journey took you a couple of days or one day to fly back?
It takes 2 days to get home just because the flight schedule didn't quite work, but
okay. We will talk about the destination a little later. Because for today's episode we're packing up our bags and heading off for a long-haul gravel adventure. We're going to be chatting with Phil Evans, a pioneer of multi-day gravel and mountain bike events in locations as inspiring as Sri Lanka and Nepal. We're going to get an insight from Phil into what it is he loves so much about long-haul gravel riding and his top tips if you decide to head somewhere exotic to ride next year. But that's for a little later when Phil will join in, because you were in Sri Lanka.
I was in Sri Lanka, which is exceptionally jammy. All my friends they all kind of shake their head and go, "How do you get to go to these places and call it work?"
Because it was your second time.
It's second, actually third time to Sri Lanka in total,
really?
But second time recently.
Well, how did you get there? I mean,
I know, because I am exceptionally jammy. I'm very, very, very fortunate.
But you
got invited.
You went to ride the bike there, right?
Yeah, but it was I was invited by Sri Lankan Airlines, who we're going to talk about in a bit, who are incredibly pro cycling. They really want cyclists to go to Sri Lanka. And so I was invited over to do a test of the event we're going to talk about with Phil in a little while, to try out the route and make sure that it worked and look at the good bits, give him feedback on it, and just make sure that it was all going to make sure I thought it was as good as possible for next year.
Okay, so
a dream job.
Yeah. That's my something in my inbox is making some noise. Excuse me. I have to close something down, I guess. There you go. So you're helping out also in you're writing an article about the destination, but also about the event, and you did a recon ride of the routes. Well, we'll discuss everything a little later with Phil when he joins in. We always have like a month's topic to chat about. Today's going big.
And I figured that was a good fit with long-haul travel, that it can be big in all senses of the word. It could be a big destination, it could be a big adventure, or just a big challenge. So yeah, I've got 3 stories that seem to fit pretty well with this. The first one was written by a guy called George, or probably Jorge because he's Spanish. He went out to Oregon in the States earlier in the year and took part in a really fantastic looking multi-day gravel race called the Oregon Trail Gravel Grinder. And it was all based around the early explorers going to Oregon in search of gold and silver and setting up trails to get into the areas where the mines were. And so the event organisers this year put an event on based on these trails that the original pioneers in Oregon went to look for and found.
Looking at the pictures, they did a great job, because it
looks
really looks like,
doesn't it?
Yeah. It has
stunning.
this old Western feel here and there.
Yeah, real cowboy country.
So Oregon Trail and other going big topics, because you did. How many articles did we do last month?
That was one of the reasons for doing this, is that in July, that was fairly recently, that was our biggest month ever, and we did 28 stories. So it was partly about going big on all senses of the word. That 28 stories in a month is our record.
I know you have a great team, a lot of writers that send in articles, but do you ever sleep?
It didn't feel like it that month. But
28 articles, that's almost an article a day, so that's
it's
huge.
Bonkers.
So we go from the US of A to Europe, to Albania.
Yeah, and this is not a destination that we feature very often, or that many Europeans would even consider going to. But it was a story written by Ali Ford, who contacted us I guess back in the spring, and said that she'd been and loved it. And it was she went as a solo female bikepacker. So it's maybe not a destination that many bikepackers full stop would have thought of going to, let alone to go as a solo woman. And she loved it and said it totally blew her. All her expectations were exceeded. It was so, and she had a fantastic time. Came back with lots of great photographs and a really good story.
I know that Albania is really, really getting more and more popular
Yeah,
as a tourist
and
location, and because it's been so isolated for so long time.
exactly.
It's probably still, well, like it was maybe just after the World War even.
Yeah, I guess so. Kind of undiscovered.
Yeah.
And that certainly comes across in her pictures. But she said the people were super friendly and welcoming, and she just had a really, really great time.
I think that maybe looking at the articles, it resembles Italy, but has a different vibe to it because it's going back in time actually.
Yeah, it looks like the 1960s, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks really like old fashioned even. Yeah.
Mm.
So I think it's if you want to go there, probably changed in a couple of years time because things are going fast. But it looks like now is the time to go there and visit Albania. I might put it on my list. The next one is also on my list because Grinduro is getting back to Quincy, USA.
Yeah. So we're going back to the States for this story, but it was too good a story not to mention this month. Grinduro is going to be 10 next year, which is obviously a heck of a celebration. It's one of the oldest established oldest established gravel events in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they started off in Quincy in California, and they're going to go back there for the first time since 2018, I think. And it just looks incredible. Huge mountains, lots of forest, amazing trails. The team that run the event on the ground do a lot of work of trail building, and so there's miles and miles and miles of incredible gravel single track. So it's that perfect combination of an amazing destination, a really good team, fantastic riding, and then obviously a big party afterwards to celebrate.
Well, it sounds like a plan to put that on the list.
Yeah.
Heading over to the spiritual home of Grinduro in Quincy. We know that we also partner up with a few events in Europe.
So we do.
We don't know exactly how the calendar will look like next year, but well, we will share that information with you as soon as possible. I think it's time to head over to the main guest of the day. That's Phil. So we have a special bumper for that. Here it comes. Yeah, here we are back again with Phil Evans from the UK. Phil, maybe you can introduce yourself before we start talking about exotic locations.
Yes, of course. As Carlo just said, my name's Phil Evans. I'm founder and director of Multi-Terrain Biking, which was formerly known as Mountain Biking Terrain, but we've now rebranded to encompass the beautiful sport of gravel biking.
Hooray!
You're in the right podcast, Phil. You're in the right podcast.
Yeah, I'm also a self-employed builder and a co-founder of an animal charity that takes care of animals, community animals in Sri Lanka and Nepal. So that's
great.
My life.
So
yeah,
pretty busy.
Too busy sometimes, but it's better to be busy than not, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess we're going to talk today, Phil, about long haul gravel, particularly because we have a variety of guests on the podcast, and sometimes we're talking about fairly not mundane destinations is a bit harsh, but not super exotic. But today we're going to the opposite extreme, and you've spent a lot of your life riding in pretty amazing locations. So how did you first get hooked into riding outside of Europe?
It was a bit of a natural progression, really. I've been involved with bikes from a very early age. I worked in a bike shop from the age of 14, then I moved to Jersey in the Channel Islands and became manager of a bike shop over there, and I've always been into cycling. And then when I was in Jersey, I sort of caught the travel bug and went on a long travel without my bike. But I've always yearned to combine the two. So once the thrill of just backpacking had worn off, I look towards combining cycling and travel, and just progress from there.
Okay.
And when was your first? Was your first visit to exotic locations like Sri Lanka or Nepal?
If you can count Canada and Alaska as exotic, that'd be
Definitely can.
I think dates. Getting a bit long in the tooth now, but I think that was about 1998 when I did my first big cycling adventure.
So you're an experienced veteran in traveling the world with your bike.
Quite experienced. I would say there's always something to learn.
But mountain biking is your first love.
Yeah, mountain biking. I've tried all the disciplines. Mountain biking, I did triathlons for a while, road biking, time trialing. But I'd say, mountain biking up until recently was my go-to biking.
But then fairly recently you discovered gravel riding. And
Yes.
are now hooked, which is good because it means we can invite you on the podcast.
Yes, of course.
How did that change come about? Why? Because gravel riding's been around for 10 years at least. How come it was a fairly recent conversion for you?
Yeah, very recent, really, but maybe only 2 years ago. So we were approached by Sri Lankan Airlines to help them put together a gravel biking event. I only had one bike at the time, a mountain bike, a full suspension mountain bike, and I knew the trails weren't going to be gnarly enough for that, so I just put some slick tyres on that for the time being. And then I was like totally amazed how much more ground I could cover and how easier the effort was than big knobbly tyres, and how much more relaxing it was than having to slog over rocky, rough terrain. So when I got back to the UK, I was like, that's it. I'm buying myself a gravel bike, and I'm going to start enjoying some of the gravel trails around North Wales where I live.
Great. How did your involvement with the airline start? Because they're such a big part of this story. We can't talk about Sri Lanka without mentioning them. It's not a common thing. For example, if you talk to many other airlines, most of them won't give two monkeys about cycling, and they won't understand it, and they won't be interested beyond bums on seats. But Sri Lankan, it's the opposite. They seem super keen. So how did that all come about in the beginning?
Yeah, they are super keen to. None of them are cyclists, I will say, but they are. The head of marketing has recently bought a bike. He'd like to take over with him, but he hasn't used it. But as a company, as Mountain Biker Worldwide was, we were looking for a new destination to take an event to. We'd been in Nepal for 7-8 years, and we was looking to expand. And a friend of mine knew Sammy, the head of marketing at Sri Lankan Airlines, and said, why don't you get in contact with him to see whether they'd be interested? So I sent them an email, and he's got straight back to me. And initially they wanted to put on a road cycling event. Okay. And I was like, that's not really my forte, road cycling. It's but we would be interested in putting a mountain bike event on. And I don't think Sri Lanka really knew what mountain biking was at the time. So I went out and did some records, and they were showing me more gravel routes, if you like.
Okay.
And I was like, no, we're looking for something a bit more brutal than this, a bit more gnarly. So eventually we settled on some routes, and Sri Lankan Airlines came on as a sponsor initially. And I think that's where they sort of saw the potential for different disciplines as well as road cycling in Sri Lanka.
And I guess from their perspective, all passengers are a benefit to them because it brings in some money. But did they target cyclists specifically rather than windsurfers or walkers or, I don't know, some other kind of sport that could go there. Was there some link with cycling particularly, or it was just they thought cyclists were just a good market to tap into?
I think they have phases. They've already like done a big promotion for surfers a few years ago, but I think cyclists bring a whole new audience or clientele to Sri Lanka. That the resort kind of clientele is already established. People that go out for their 2 weeks by the beach, just stay at the hotel really. And apart from backpackers that don't really spend that much money in Sri Lanka, cyclists like to explore and not be staying in one place for 1 or 2 nights at a time. So I think it opens up a whole, like if they can attract adventure cyclists, it opens up a whole new kind of market for them, as well as bums on seats in the planes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
When you first started working out there, you ran a mountain bike event called the Rumble in the Jungle, which is a really super good name for an event. It was a very clever bit of marketing, and it ran until 2018, something like that.
Yeah, 2018,
and then switched. And then you've run an event now called Ride Sri Lanka last year, and is that right? 2023?
2023 was the pilot one, and then
right.
yeah.
And then this year it ran for the first time properly, and then next year in March you're going to run it again, which is the reason that I've just been out there.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about the event for anyone that hasn't heard of it? What is Ride Sri Lanka, and why should gravel riders be interested in it?
Well, Ride Sri Lanka is much less extreme than what we used to go for in previous years. I was all about making things as uncomfortable as possible for everybody and as brutal as possible. But unfortunately, not everyone sees fun the same way as I do. So yeah, Ride Sri Lanka is it's not a race. It's more of an event where you can ride at your own speed. If you want to go fast, you can. If you want to go slow, you can. But it's more about highlighting what the country has to offer. So one of the requisites of route finding was to take in some of the iconic landmarks of Sri Lanka, and also to be staying at quality hotels, which is, again, the airline are keen to show people that another side of Sri Lanka, that it's not just like your $5 a night room. You have got nice resorts and places to stay.
So it's that combination of fairly wild adventurous cycling, but then super posh accommodation each night is quite an interesting combination, because normally in an event it's one or the other. It's either really luxurious, everything.
And how many days
soft.
is it, Phil? How many days do people ride?
5 days overall, 5 days riding, and then they're out in Sri Lanka, well, a minimum of 9 nights, but of course they're welcome to stay longer if they want.
And you have the experience of riding. You both have the experience of riding in Sri Lanka. Well, you did a route already, Olly. What, if you have to convince me to come over, what are the highlights of riding in Sri Lanka?
You get to see a massive diversity in a short space of time. So you're starting on the northeast coast on the calm, tranquil Indian Ocean, and then a day later, you're going past the iconic landmark of the Sigiriya, which is probably the most famous landmark in Sri Lanka.
It's this enormous lump of sandstone rock that sticks out of the plain that was turned into a fortress in 17-something or other, 18-something or other, and you climb up the side on ladders and steps carved out of the stone to get to the top, and it's very hard to describe unless you've seen it, but it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's probably the image that comes up if everyone imagines Sri Lanka, really. But then, from there, we head into the hill country. So you're starting in 30 to 40 degree heat. When you get into New Delhi at 1,800 metres, you could be down to 5 degrees and in mist, can feel quite cold. You're through tea plantation territory. Yeah, I think that is the biggest draw card is the diversity, and with cycling, we get to see a side of Sri Lanka that your mainstream tourism. We go through villages that mainstream tourism will hardly ever touch. So you get, it's such the locals are so happy to see people going through there. It's just so heartwarming, really.
I think that's probably the bit that sticks in my brain the most is how friendly and welcoming everybody is. They do a double take when you cycle through because half of them have never seen sports cyclists before, and you turn up and you can see them go, huh? And then instantly after they got over the shock, then they smile. And all the kids particularly are just amazing. They're so friendly and happy, and they've all learnt some English at school, so now they all say hiya as you're cycling along, which is really funny. Or come on if you're going up a steep climb, and it's incredible that welcome it's really. I think that's the bit that sticks in my brain the most.
It's a complete different from being in the UK. But yeah, you get the hello, bye in the one sentence.
And how long are the stages?
So we've got various different distances on each day to try and cater for a wide mobility of people. So, for instance, the first day you can ride 132k is the maximum, or 50k is the shortest. Then we've got one in between the two. And each day's round about that varies, depends how many hills are in the way or whether it's flat or not.
So you're really aiming at the biggest target audience as possible. If people want to go, they can accommodate to their wishes and do like a shorter route or a longer one.
Yeah, because that's one of the big advantages of being under the umbrella of the national carrier of Sri Lanka is they can pull up the support from practically any avenue. We have the Air Force, the police.
It's nice, yeah.
The support for the event is everyone who's ever been on a Sri Lankan Airlines event is like just amazed by the amount of like support there is.
So there really is like the underlying, and there's also obviously like it's an airline, so they wanna sell tickets, but they also want to share the country with. You're gonna see the real Sri Lanka. They're all the marketing team are really passionate about people. They don't just want them to be riding their bikes for 12 hours a day and head down and just get to the hotel next day riding again. They want them, and they put on kind of extra activities like say it says you can climb Sigiriya, that would be an option, and then if there's time in the evenings we go to see the elephants, or so they try and utilize the amount of utilize your time there to the best. In your time working now with the gravel community, gravel, do you feel that is there a different vibe to it than a mountain bike scene? Are they more inclined to do an event like that, to get out there to really see the country, meet the people?
Yeah, I think a lot more relaxed than mountain bikers, I would say.
That's what we like to hear also, but that's what we hear a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and more. I haven't had that much experience because obviously I've only worked on 2 gravel biking events so far. And the first one was a group of elite endurance riders. But from last year, from the 24, when it was open to the public, it was such a good mix of people, and even now, almost 8 months later, there's still a WhatsApp group chat with people. Some of them were mountain bikers to start with, but yeah, they're all, it's like a big family now, and it's good. It's rewarding to see that, and
that's nice to hear, isn't it? That the gravel riders are a good community.
Yeah.
We're proud of that.
Should we move on next then? So we've talked about Sri Lanka, which is incredible, but you're also doing another event next year in Nepal, which is perhaps even more incredible. Talk to us about your history of riding in Nepal, first of all.
So, riding history, yeah. I've been going to Nepal since, what should I say, 1989, 90, I would say.
Wow.
But not with a bike then. But during my years in Nepal, I came across an article on the Everest Marathon. And although I'm not much of a runner, it kind of piqued my interest, and I thought I need to do that. So, but it wasn't until about 10 years later that I had the opportunity to be able to enter it and do it. But as soon as I started on it, I was like, this format could really work for mountain biking. The tea houses, the like travelling between the tea houses, there's always somewhere to stay, but it's also really remote. So yeah, so that was back in, when did I? 2003 I did the Everest Marathon, and then that's got me thinking about a mountain biking event, even though I'd never been involved in any kind of events before, just mechanics basically, or shop management. But yeah, I got back and thought, yeah, that'd be really, really cool. I got quite a good connection with Nepal already by then, because I've been out quite a few times. So I sent a few emails out to different companies with the idea of putting on a mountain bike event, and yeah, it escalated from there, shall we say.
Great. And you've obviously got a knack for getting a good name, because the mountain bike one's called the Yak Attack, which it's absolutely infamous in the mountain bike community for being so incredible scenery and a real challenge. I mean, the Torong La Pass is higher than the highest mountain in Europe, and the riders have to go over it as part of the event. So it's pretty tough, isn't it?
Oh, it's pretty extreme, which is, yeah, it makes hard work for the logistics.
I can imagine.
But it does make it like you say, an iconic event amongst the mountain biking world, but also scary for a lot of people, even though it's well, I'm saying it's not. I've been over 15 times now, and it's
okay.
like an old hat. But I suppose for a lot of people thinking about going to 5,400 metres, it is quite a big step to take.
And is that one of the kind of factors behind creating the Trans Nepal for next year, then, doing a slightly softer version of the Yak Attack? So it's still cycling, still remote, but not quite as gnarly.
Yeah, well, yeah. Again, transgression into gravel biking. The Annapurna circuit, although people have done it on gravel bikes, I can't see that it'd be much fun on a gravel bike.
Too many steps, aren't there? Just millions and millions and millions of steps.
So yeah, I was looking to bring more cyclists to Nepal. And with gravel biking now in our minds, I was looking at routes where we could do gravel biking, and the Trans Nepal just stood out, like massively stood out for the terrain and for the, again, diversity of what's on offer there.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the event then? What would it include, and where does it go, partly? Because that's, as soon as I saw it, I was instantly hooked within about 10 seconds just because of where it starts. But for anybody that doesn't know of it, what's the event all about? So,
yeah, it starts, the actual riding proper starts in a place called Lomantang, which is the, if you like, capital, but not how you would imagine a capital to be, of Upper Mustang, which is the kind of, I suppose, north mid-region of Nepal. It's only been open to foreigners since, I think, 82, I think. And it's a very, restricted area. Tourism hasn't hit it mainstream yet. It's quite still as it was, and it's a completely different terrain to the rest of Nepal.
It looks more Tibetan, doesn't it? More than typical kind of Nepali that you might picture on a postcard.
A big Buddhist influence, a lot of Buddhist stupas and monasteries, and you'll see most of the locals sat around counting the mandala beads, and it's it sits in the rain shadow, so it's a very dry landscape. There's a lot of climbing involved in Upper Mustang, but it's not as steep or as brutal as maybe longer climbs, but not as brutal climbs, if you know.
And probably not so technically challenging either. It's more kind of gravel terrain, isn't it? But just significantly higher than most Westerners would have ridden it.
Yeah. Luckily for us, the Chinese have been in and forged a massive gravel road from China right through Upper Mustang to the Lower Mustang border, where it then joins the highway down. Well, not the highway, but the track down to the lowlands, really. So, although it's a bit sad in one way that there's a big, massive road to going through there, it's a gravel road, and we're gonna utilise it.
Yeah, absolutely. The appeal of going to Mustang is the bit that sold it to me, I have to say, just because so few people can go there, and it's incredibly wild and remote, but just this unbelievably beautiful landscape. And if you're into mountains and you're into gravel riding, it ticks all the boxes.
The first time I went, I was amazed at the change of landscape just from crossing the pass into Upper Mustang, and then it's just like it's like being in a different country, but like 10 kilometres away from where you were originally.
Yeah. It's quite a small scale event, isn't it, this one? So you're going to limit the numbers because it's so wild and remote, and you don't want to spoil the landscape. So tell us a bit about the kind of practicalities. How do you manage an event where you're taking people somewhere that's 3 days drive from anywhere, and then look after them and are at 5,000 meters? What do you kind of do behind the scenes to make sure it's all done in a safe manner?
Obviously, we have to. One of the major concerns with being at altitude is altitude sickness. Mm-hmm. And anything over 2,800 meters, that's when it starts. It can start. So one of our major things is to have medics, doctors that are qualified in treatment and diagnosis of altitude sickness. All riders have to have insurance that will cover them for helicopter evacuation, and then it's just it's a matter of keeping track of everybody so that they don't get lost in the wilderness. So keeping tabs at each water station, and mainly making sure everyone's on track. And
water station is a good link into the next bit of our conversation, and you do a lot of work with charities as part of your events, and in Nepal particularly you work with a water charity, don't you, to try and reduce the amount of plastic waste. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
We've been working with the founder of Smart Parney, which is the charity, is a American guy called Tyler McMahon, and he came on the very first, maybe the second yak attack, and he came for the next 6 years. But it wasn't until about 5-6 years ago that they had the equipment to be able to do kind of remote water filtration. But now that's what every event we do now, we work with Smart Parney to they supply us with the water filters, and then the volunteers are trained up how to use the filters, and it reduces the amount of plastic we use, down to nothing really.
Great.
Which is that's one of the blights of the Himalayas is the use of single-use plastic, really. So anything we can do to reduce that is fantastic.
You do a lot of work with a lot of your staff and your volunteers are Nepali as well, aren't they, rather than ferrying Westerners out there? And is that, again, part of trying to have as a bigger positive impact as possible as you can.
Yes, well, yeah, we're like I say, I've been going to Nepal for countless years now, and I've lots of friends in the cycling community, and their only source of work really is guiding or working in shops. So if we can give them at least a guaranteed couple of weeks' work twice a year with our events, as opposed to taking foreign volunteers out there, then that's got to be beneficial. And yeah, we try. Well, we don't try. We do pay them above the rates that they would do if they were working for a travel company, and it gives them an opportunity, because they're all cyclists that volunteer or volunteer work. They're all cyclists, so it gives them an opportunity to integrate with international riders, foreign riders, and maybe forge some relationships where they're supported into the future or invited out to their country, and that's happened on quite a few occasions now.
Great. It's one of the elephant in the room, I guess, about doing long haul riding is the negative environmental impact of it. And one of the things that you do with Sri Lankan Airlines or one of the things they are keen on, is to try and reduce their impact. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, they're really keen on reducing their impact. For one example, last year I wanted everybody to take a tuk-tuk up to Lipton Sea to then ride their bikes down from there, and the airline were like, no, that's not very environmentally friendly. But what they're doing as a company is they're replanting mangrove forests in the lagoon near Negombo, and I think doing something with sea kelp. And both these are meant to sequester carbon at a much higher rate than any terrestrial forest. So I think that's the avenue they're going down, is to try and develop these mangrove and sea kelp plantations to kind of offset a little bit.
Is there things that the individual riders can do as well, do you think, to reduce their own impact, or to, even if not to reduce the impact, but to make a positive benefit on where they go?
That's a good question.
I mean, even interaction with local people is, if you do it in the right way, makes a real benefit, doesn't it, to both? You educate the riders, and hopefully you introduce the local people to Western riders. You get that kind of cross-fertilization of cultures. And
yeah, I was going to say, I know like air travel's not the best for the environment, but if we didn't travel, it'd be a very insular world. And I think, in my opinion, that people who travel frequently are more empathetic. People that travel frequently and experience different cultures and different environments are more empathetic and with other nationalities, other different people, different from themselves, really.
Yeah.
So I think that is the biggest benefit of international travel, is the broadening of your empathy for other people.
But I agree, and it's also, it seems, I think that's the challenge of this time, is that it's always hard to get the right balance between, okay, we do things that are not really environmental friendly, but on the other hand, we bring people together. We see that also in the gravel community, because it's really one of the topics that's also on the agenda there. Is, well, everybody has to find a way to get that balance.
If I could encourage everybody to cycle to our events, I would, but not everyone can get that amount of time off work.
Well, I think it starts with the discussion like we have. It's good to talk about it, and there are downsides and upsides.
There's never a perfect Perfect
For
solution.
For the Nepali trip particularly, there's a lot of financial benefits to local community, isn't there? If you're staying in tea huts, the money's going straight into the local economy. It's not going to some big corporation somewhere. So that's a real tangible benefit of tourism going through.
Yeah, especially like the Trans-Nepal where it's running outside the main tourist season, so it'll be providing income to a lot of the tea houses that would not be doing any business that time of year.
Okay. Now we're going to ask, seeing as you're a well-traveled man, we're going to ask your expertise. If say for someone that's never traveled outside Europe and they're going to do a 14-hour flight to Sri Lanka, or they're going to do a long journey to Mustang, is a long journey, isn't it, from the UK, for example? Is there anything you would recommend to make their travel less tiring or more pleasant, or how can they make it as enjoyable as possible? What do you do? What's your top tips for long haul travel?
I'd say forearmed is forewarned. For all our trips, we don't try. We do send out like a comprehensive information pack, if you like, that tries to give as much first-hand information as possible about what to expect at the airport, because that's a big shock for people, especially Kathmandu.
Kathmandu is bonkers, isn't it? When you come out of the airport and you feel like you've landed on an alien planet somewhere.
So if you're armed with that information and you know a little bit what to expect, it's not so much of a shock to the system. I think that's the main thing that can help you, is to know a little bit of what to expect, so you're not on a knife edge all the time of wondering, why is that happening? What's going on there? What do I do?
Okay. You put on your website for the Trans-Nepal about learning to love dal bhat as well. So what is dal bhat, first of all, for anybody that hasn't had it, and why should riders on the trip, why should they love it?
Dal bhat is the staple meal of Nepal. It's there's a veggie version, which is rice, dal curry, and vegetable curry and some pickles, and maybe a papadum if you're lucky. And then the non-veg version is you'll either get chicken or what they call mutton, which is normally goat, curry with it. Nearly all Nepalis eat this twice a day, without fail. Maybe 10 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night, roundabout. If you take them out for a meal, normally they'll plump for dal bhat. You take them to an international restaurant where you have pizza or pasta or whatever. They love dal bhat. So it's and it is a really good meal for a cyclist to have. It's high carb. It's safe. It's not spicy. When I say curry, it's not a spicy curry. Yeah. It's just mildly flavoured. And it's a good all-round meal, I suppose. You've got your carbs, you've got your vegetables, you've got your protein and your lentils and your dal. So, yeah.
One of the things I heard as well is that it's from a food safety perspective, the fact that Nepali people practically live on it, they cook it the whole time, they know how to do it perfectly, and the turnover is really fast. So the stuff's going to be fresh. It's not going to have been sitting there for 2 days before you eat it, because they get through so much. So when I first went to Nepal, I was advised to eat it just from a keeping your stomach safe perspective. And also there was an environmental bit of that as well, that because they're making it in such big volume, they don't need to cook it specially, so they don't need so much gas, or they don't need so much firewood, because they're going to be making a big pot of it anyway. So it ticks lots of boxes, doesn't it, from that point of view?
It is. Every time I go to Nepal, I convince myself I'm going to live on dal bhat entirely, but I've never been able to manage to do it yet. No. At some point, it's like, I'm just craving something that's not dal bhat.
That was one of the things that blew me away last week in Sri Lanka, is how good the food is. And I think from a rider's perspective, you're staying in very nice accommodation, and the food is just exceptional. everything from even the airline food. As soon as you check in, it was the nicest airline food I've ever had, and it just went the whole way until I came home. So
What was the best meal you had in Sri Lanka?
probably fish, because they do such a lot of it. There's all sorts: tuna, really good shellfish, amazing prawns. But I had loads. The curry was really great, and there's huge variety, so you can have really whatever you want. One day for lunch, I was absolutely starving because I did a huge day, and we stopped in a little tiny village in the middle of nowhere, and there was one place open that had what they called a buffet, but I think we'd been their only visitors that day, and the choice was curry or curry, but it was super good, and it was very local. I don't think they'd had any Western tourists in there ever, so it was quite eye-opening. The hotels are a bit more Western, so there's a good choice of food.
Yeah, it's so hard not to put on weight on the Sri Lankan events.
It blooming is. You could absolutely come home weighing kilos and kilos more.
Because the buffets are just like, oh, I'll just try a bit of that, or I'll just have some of that.
One more bit of cake.
Just one more bit of cake, or yeah.
What else is on our list to talk about, Carlo? We're going to talk about a bike actually for 2 seconds, Phil.
Yeah,
So they're quite different trips. The Nepali one is very high. It's there's long climbs on it, and some of it's quite rough. Sri Lanka, in comparison, the first couple of days at least are pretty smooth, and there's a lot of what we would call champagne gravel in the UK. There is some gnarly bits in the middle, but I guess some of them are optional. So if you were going to go for, let's do Sri Lanka first of all, what would be the ideal setup, do you think, for your Ride Sri Lanka trip?
I'd say, 1x11.
1x12, obviously, now, because Shimano have brought it out recently.
Oh, no, 1x12, sorry. 1x12. I don't know, 40C plus tyres.
Yeah.
Something that you can create a breeze with.
Yeah, it was plenty hot.
Yeah, it's something that you can carry a couple of water bottles on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't say any kind of suspension would be necessary for Sri Lanka.
No.
Like you say, it's pretty. There are a couple of gnarly sections, but they can be ridden around.
I think my advice would be to have a good climbing gear, because one of the days, I can't remember which day it was, but one of them had some really steep ramps at the end that were 20% plus. And although they're dead short, they were blooming steep, and I was very happy that I had a good climbing gear.
But did you take your bike, Ollie?
Yeah, I took my own.
Because that's also for international travel. It's always people are always a little hesitant of should I take the bike? Should I have a bike rental there? What would your advice be, Phil?
For Sri Lanka, definitely take your own bikes. Bike rental is very primitive, shall we say. You won't be able to hire a gravel bike in Sri Lanka, and you'd be lucky to find a quality like mountain bike even. So definitely for Sri Lanka. Plus, if anyone's going out for one of the Sri Lankan Airlines events, the airline give them 40 kilos as standard. So you haven't got to worry about the excess luggage.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
But Nepal, the market for hire bikes is much bigger. So really, but it's always nice to ride your own bike.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
true.
Yeah, you never. I hired a bike for Yakutak last year, and the brakes were the wrong way around. Not the wrong way around, but the
other
way around to what I'm used to, and I didn't bother changing them, and then I fell off within the first 20 kilometres and broke a rib. So, but I don't think that would have happened if it had been on my own bike. I'd have been more in control. So there's pros and cons. It's nice not to travel with a bike. Every time I take my bike away, I'm like, until it's loaded on the plane, I'm like, this is a right pain. But
and how about spare products? Like, do you need to bring your own spare materials, or is it mechanics around at your events? Or
yeah, we've got mechanics at both events. If there's anything like bespoke for your bike, then you probably won't get that in Sri Lanka. You might get it in Nepal, but
I would say bring a mech hanger, if nothing else.
The mech
Because if the
hanger,
mech hanger breaks, you're absolutely scuppered.
yeah,
Whereas brake pads, you can probably borrow some off a friend, or
yeah,
in a tube or whatever you can do. Tubeless plugs is easy, but a mech hanger, it's unique to
Yeah.
your bike.
good advice. That, yeah.
What
Always have
about
that with you.
for the Nepali trip? What kind of bike would you recommend there? Because it's obviously a lot higher and a lot longer climbs.
Yeah, not a lot of difference. I think a bit lower geared than Sri Lanka, I'd say. Maybe because the descents are a lot. Obviously, the climbs are longer, the descents are longer as well. Maybe some kind of stem or fork suspension.
Or a bigger volume tyres.
Bigger volume tyres, yeah, go that way. Nothing too heavy because obviously the climbs are very long. There's less weight you hauling up them, the better.
How long is the longest climb then? Because is it in Nepal? You'll be climbing for hours or?
Could be climbing for, like, some of them are probably up to 12, 13, 14k.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, although it's
and
predominantly
altitude as well. Some of them.
Yeah. Sure.
yeah. Although the majority of the climbings, when we get into the foothills, there's one big day in the foothills where we're at about 2,000 meters, but there's about, I think off the top of my head, 4,000 meters of climbing. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's hefty.
so I'd
Plenty.
say definitely something very low, with as lower gear as you can get,
Okay.
and maybe even bring a change of tyres, because the terrain will alter from between Upper Mustang and when you get into Terai. You could probably ride slightly less volume tyres once you're in the Terai.
Okay. Right, got 2 more questions for you, Phil. The first one is, what's the one thing you wouldn't be without when you're travelling? Obviously not including your passport, because we just assume you're going to have that with you. What's your one thing you have to take wherever you go?
It's not very useful for anybody else, but it's a photo of my dog. He's the thing I miss the most when I'm travelling. So I need to keep him in mind.
Great. Carlo, do you want to do the last question?
Yeah, we have the standard last question, so we always finish off with this one. If we put you on a desert island and you could only take one kind of bike with you, what would it be and why?
Would you tell me what the terrain of the desert island was before you dropped me off?
Ooh. Well,
How mountainous is this?
it's the first time that we get a question back on this one. It's a clever question.
Because that obviously wouldn't influence my choice.
It might.
It might, but then I suppose if you're saying desert island, I'm envisaging flats and sand and palm tree. So
I still hear the mountain biker in you, Phil.
Well, I'm going probably hardtail fat bike.
I was going to say you were heading towards a fat bike then. I could see that.
I've never ridden one, but I'm envisaging that would be the ideal form of transport for a desert island.
If you're riding on the sand, it'd make a lot of sense.
Yeah. That's a clever choice. Thank you very much.
Nobody's ever said that before.
No. We always force people into gravel bike as an answer.
But if it had a dyno hub, that would be even better, because you could generate a bit of electricity in the evenings as well.
Oh, clever. So you thought this through.
Oh, I have thought it through, yeah.
This is the most original answer we got in all our podcasts, so Phil, thank you for that.
Oh, that's good. That's good news.
Well, maybe that was the last question, but if you have another one lined up, Ollie, or should we head over to the infamous outro? So there we go.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much for joining in this month's edition of Gravel Union Talks. Thanks a lot, Phil. If you have any suggestions for guests or topics you would like us to feature in future shows, then please post a comment on our Facebook page, Instagram, or get in touch through the website. Simply send an email, is also possible, info@gravelunion.cc, and we will do our best to fit your tips into our schedule. Please like and star us on your favorite podcast platform and make sure to leave some hopefully positive remarks. Don't forget, if you like what you've heard in this episode, there's loads more great stories, features, news pieces and all the latest gravel event information over at the gravelunion.cc website. Special thanks to Martijn for designing our music and Ruben for editing the show. Thank you again for listening and hope you can join us again for the next episode of Gravel Union Talks.